Hi, I'm David Engerman. I'm excited to return to the National Institute, which I've had the good fortune to find early in my Yale career. I'm just in my third year now, after spending about 20 years teaching at Brandeis University outside Boston. I may be a newcomer, but I gather I'm a little old-fashioned here, that I don't actually have a slideshow, so you'll just have to look at me for a few minutes or look away if that's what you'd prefer. Uh, I did make it through, as a number of us did, through the kind of surprises of last year. So unfortunately, I haven't seen the summer intensive session in all their on-campus glory, but can assure you that we'll be fine either way. I think for most of us, found the virtual approach had a number of advantages and still was really worthwhile and exciting. My summer intensive program, as Jim said, will be on U.S. social movements through biography. And it's a chance to think about how to tell important elements of American history through individual lives. We'll focus on a variety of different movements for social justice. First and foremost of these is the ongoing African-American freedom struggle, which is intertwined with all aspects of US history. But we'll also look to a number of other movements for equality and full citizenship: the women's movement, struggle for Native Americans, Asian Americans, LGBTQ rights, and so on. And finally, we'll look also at movements for workers' rights. From the perspective of today, these kind of identity-based movements loom very large, and rightly so. But especially after seeing Ian Shapiro's charts on income inequality, think about the sort of fate of unionization efforts and movements for workers and other movements for workers' rights. Like Sharbani, I'll adjust the readings here based on our participant interests. So some set readings for our organizational session in spring, but at that point, at the end, we'll set up a set of readings that corresponds most closely to the kinds of topics that teachers are interested in pursuing for their curriculum units. I'm also open to questions about afterward about what would be most appropriate. Now, why a biographical approach? So the first, what I've talked about so far is is U.S. social movements, but why is a biographical approach important? I mean, I think when done right, life stories can be compelling narratives and rich fields for analysis. They can get students interested in individual lives and dramas, but also teach them broader historical themes. And I think of some of the favorite history books I've read and history lessons I've taught that do such a good job of weaving individual lives into broader fabrics. History of abolition around Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, around the Grimstead sisters, around unionization, about the number of activists, including people like Eugene Victor Debs, or a women's labor movement that grew dramatically in the early 20th century, are really fascinating ways to talk about economics and power in their own time. Using Bayard Rustin to show kind of a continuity of a civil rights movement that started before Brown v. Board in 1954 and went after the Civil Rights Act of 1965. We can also look at people like Betty Friedan and the radical 1960s feminism. On the ground accounts for all of these movements are readily available. We can look at thinkers and doers in the American Indian movement and gender sexuality claims, et cetera. Another nice thing about biographies is I think they're particularly open to alternative formats. After all, this is the art form for which Svetlana Alexeyeva won the Nobel Prize. We have plenty of films, Spike Lee and Malcolm X, for instance. There are possibilities of using graphic novels. There are plenty of collective biographies. There are even fictional lives that we could consider using in approaching social movements. Teaching history through biographies allows us to, or helps us at least, understand heroes and villains in their own times. And it helps make sense of those big processes that always appear in textbooks, but just seem so abstract, these isations about large-scale social processes: urbanization, industrialization, immigration, but also these same abstractions about individual change, radicalization, modernization, secularization. Finally, biography is a great way to help students engage with inquiry-based learning. And here, of course, it's not the only way to do it, but it's one great avenue into this. And we'll be guided in our seminar here by the progenitor of of inquiry-based learning, Sam Weinberg, whose book, here, Why Study History When It's Already on Your Phone, will be a guide to some part of thinking through the kinds of approaches we can take to teaching US social movements through biography. This biography lends itself to the kinds of inquiry that Sam Weinberg wants teachers and students to undertake. It makes for manageable and well-defined research projects for students, and I would also note for teachers as well. And most importantly, for Sam Weinberg and for me at least, it allows students to think like historians, understand the relationships between individuals and societies, to interrogate sources, primary and secondary sources, and to ask questions. After all, it's called inquiry-based, and to seek answers rather than be told what's what in a kind of prepackaged form. So what will we do in the seminar? We'll read some exemplary life stories from across American history and some readings that will set these in context. We'll spend some time looking at life histories, possibly including those based here at Yale, which has a number of interesting biographical collections. Our more general readings will be organized around the topics of the curriculum units. So again, we'll see what the teachers want to work on before setting up a final syllabus. Planning on kind of brief exploration of probably 3 topics in US history that can serve to broaden our knowledge of that history, to reflect on ways to interpret those key episodes for our students, and to provide background for work on curriculum units. One other thing that we'll try and work on here is, especially since the seminar could easily end up virtually, is think about ways that we can work together in these individual curriculum projects to situate them inside a collective enterprise. We can think about American history and how to interpret it and teach it. We'll get a chance to read and discuss some excellent and indeed inspiring works, and to learn about a number of inspiring lives that provoke big questions. And again, to spend plenty of time pursuing your own curriculum units, learning from each other as well. One thing I noticed, I particularly encourage the study of local movements, which may be particularly appealing for teachers and your students, and also a side benefit is a chance for me to learn more about social movements at the local level. So who is the seminar for? Well, it's obviously and directly applicable to middle grade and high school teachers of US history, of English and language arts. I am sorry to say that it overlaps considerably with my 2020 seminar. So I see Lisa, Mark, Krista, Lauren, still going by a pseudonym on there. And we'll find a way to get the gang together in the future, but I'm afraid this seminar is probably not the best opportunity for that, with the overlap of likely topics and general readings. So I'd look forward to working with all of you to embarking on another year of the unknown and coming to know you and your interests in the process. Thanks.